One of the key ways of growing your audience for your podcast and getting more engaged listeners and even converting your podcast so you can get more leads and clients is making sure that you are leveraging every platform and also utilizing the platform to its fullest. So today I'm going to talk solely about LinkedIn. This is probably going to be the shortest episode maybe I've done, but that's okay. It'll pack a punch and we'll give you some actionable tips that you can use in your LinkedIn account right away so that you are featuring your podcast and showcasing content from your podcast in a super easy way. So let's dive in. Alrighty. So, I used to hate LinkedIn. Have you hated it? I hated it for the longest time. I just was in there because I sort of felt like I had to. But now, honestly, there's like 830 million users on the platform. And for me, like my business is geared towards business owners and entrepreneurs. So it makes sense for me to be in LinkedIn and connect with other professionals, connect with other podcasters and those in the podcasting industry. So do know your avatar. If you're, connecting with B2C and, individuals versus businesses, it may not make sense for you to dive into LinkedIn. So I just kind of want to give that caveat first. Now, looking at the very basics of LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you are setting up your profile accurately. And absolutely, your profile, the way it looks, the language that you're using, and the features within the profile absolutely will make an impact on how you're attracting your avatar, attracting podcast listeners, and making sure that you are boosting your credibility as much as you can and showcasing your podcast. So the first thing I want to talk about is your profile. So I'm going to go through a bunch of little sections of it. The first one is the banner. So yes, there's a circular image for like the picture of you. Everyone wants a face to your profile, a name to the business, a person that they want to connect with. But there's that whole banner section that's at that top width. And it's amazing how many LinkedIn profiles just have that blank or they just have a logo. That is huge real estate. It's the first thing you see as soon as you open up LinkedIn and go onto someone's profile. So mine, you'll see, and I'll have some pictures in the show notes, guys. So don't worry about that if you're just listening currently. I have my logo at the top, my tagline, the website, but I also have a picture of my podcast art so that they know I have a podcast right away. It will pique curiosity and be like, oh, I need to check that podcast out. So that's the first thing. Next is your actual profile name and headline. So believe it or not, you can actually have more information in there other than just your name. You can even have emojis to like grab attention and make it stand out. For me, mine says Lindsay Phillips hyphen podcast services and then a little podcast mic. So that way, when someone sees my name, they know exactly what I do at a moment's glance. Now, there's also more information under that that's called like the headline, and there's the description. So I have in there, again, I'll have a picture: podcast launches, podcast production, podcast promotion, and content marketing. You can also have in there, leverage your podcast host. So you can kind of seed and hint and showcase that you're a host of a podcast within that real estate and within that text. So the way I've done it is not necessarily, the way that you may want to do it. I just want to make sure you understand that real estate and that opportunity of leveraging that part of your profile. I even have under there that I talk about hashtag marketing, hashtag podcasting, hashtag podcast host so that they know I'm a podcast host, podcasting tips. So I do put hashtags in there as well and kind of elaborate a little bit more of what topics I cover Again, that first glance, people will know, oh yeah, I want to dive into their content, check out their material, maybe go to their site. So I'll have pictures as well in the show notes so that you can see what part of that profile, kind of where you start entering that information. Now, this is fairly new and it's huge. You can actually link to a resource or your podcast in that very top real estate that's underneath the banner where your name is, the profile name. So and then there's like a contact information. So mine again has Lindsay Phillips -podcast services with a little emoji. And then I have what my services are. And then there's like a button for people clicking my contact information. Then right underneath that, it says free podcast leverage system. So you can enter the text of what that resource is, and then it's blue so that you can tell it's hyperlinked. People will click it and then automatically go to my opt-in. So that way you are giving people the opportunity of getting a free resource, and you have a larger ability of getting more traffic to that and getting more leads and clients, obviously pulling them into your funnel. You can also, though, use that, online resource space or link for your podcast. Start watching, leverage your podcast show here. So I could easily change that should I wish. So it's just so that you know that it is there to highlight. Now, next, I want to talk about a really underutilized area in your LinkedIn profile, and that is your profile description. Many people kind of put like their resume or like their education that they had or where they worked last, or kind of like, what awards they've received. That's more if you're like looking for jobs, I guess. I would not do it that way. The best practice is to have copy that is attracting your ideal client. So they're going to read it and be like, oh, I'm in the right place. What's in it for me, right? You need to look at it from their perspective and how you can help them. So cover the problem, your experience and the solution. And you can also share, of course, we're talking about podcasts here, right? You can also share that you're a host of Leverage Your Podcast Show, and prompt them to search for the podcast name in their favorite directory for more tips, and talk about your area of expertise and how you'll help them. You can put hashtags in there as well and break it up so it's not like one big long continuous paragraph, right? So there's different things that you can do to optimize that profile description. Now, I did interview Anthony Jones a while back, who's a LinkedIn expert. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. So to make sure that you check out that episode and you can reach out to him. He's a huge LinkedIn expert and has a wealth of knowledge if you want to really deep dive or get more help. So next, I want to talk about an area where you can actually showcase your podcast episodes. You can showcase your blogs, you can showcase your content, your body of work. And so this enables people to see your expertise, see your podcast and start listening and become obviously a loyal fan and listener. And it is called featured. So the featured section of your profile. So when you go into your profile, there are like, experience, there is description, there's different sections, awards, publications. There's different sections of your profile that you can activate and add content into. So for mine, I showcase, you have a spot for 3 things. So I showcase my Leverage Your Podcast LinkedIn newsletter. We'll get into that in a minute. Next, I showcase one of my podcast episodes, and it was one where I was talking. Of course, I want to showcase my expertise. And then the third is I showcase a blog article. So for those people that want to read and not necessarily want to listen. So showcasing different areas. So for you, you could showcase an episode maybe that you've guested on. You can showcase your own podcast. And then maybe showcase, I don't know, your media page or a blog where it really showcases your expertise on an area where you get your best clients. So just kind of be very strategic about what you're selecting. So you heard me mention LinkedIn newsletters. I did do an episode, as I mentioned, on LinkedIn newsletters and LinkedIn articles. So that is a great way of leveraging LinkedIn to showcase your podcast episodes. So you would have the show notes, the graphic, the link to the audio you can put in the video, different elements, and obviously links to your resources to convert listeners to a lead. And of course, convert traffic to your website. So you want to get more organic traffic. So last but not least, because this is actually my favorite part, and that is using LinkedIn to promote your podcast episodes. Now, I go through this in more detail with my podcast leverage system, especially with the repurposing and the multiplying content, the two the last parts of the 4-step system. And this is how you want to promote your podcast. Obviously, you're gonna showcase, hey, this episode went live, give them pieces of information as to what was included in that episode, or kind of like what key takeaways they would get by listening to it. You want to hook them, right? You want to entice them to listen. But on top of that, you also want to create consumable content that people can listen, watch, read, share, comment right away. So, and here are a few examples. One would be creating quote graphics for, things that you've said in the podcast or that your guest has said in the podcast. And even like tips. So a little takeaway or one really good nugget of information that the guest gave or you gave. And then just creating that graphic, putting it in the post. This is not linking to anywhere. It's just consumable, easy content where people can have like a quick little takeaway. And you're showcasing your expertise, and you're showcasing your guest, and you're showcasing your podcast. Third is using audiograms. So they are it's like an image with a little wave file. So it's got movement. They're typically anywhere from, 10 seconds, I don't know, to a minute. I like to keep them under a minute because then it's easier to use for Instagram. You can make them square. You can have different sizes. You can make them for Instagram, stories, reels, you name it. And quite often it has captions on it as well. And it's just like a little nugget of information or inspiration or quote, but in a way that's consumable. So when people are scrolling, they can listen to it right away or read the captions and kind of glean that information. And if they glean that information, we're like, ooh, that was a really good tip. They're more likely to then search up that podcast in their favorite app or directory, or go to your website and listen to that whole episode, hopefully binge a bunch of your episodes, and hopefully subscribe and become a loyal listener. And then, so besides audiograms, there's also video clips. So you've probably seen on my social media, square video clips of the same. So little, tips or quotes or tidbits of information that my guest has said or that I've said, that are takeaways. Again, same bat deal, right? Like someone's going to hear and listen to that and see it and read the captions as well and be like, oh, that's a good piece of information. They're going to take that away and see you as the expert, or they're likely going to be like, ooh, I need to listen to the whole episode and become a listener. You're getting the drift here, right? And then, yes, I've already mentioned creating newsletters within LinkedIn and creating those articles. And so tons of ways, guys, for you to use LinkedIn to promote, to get content out there, showcase yourself as an expert, and also grow your network and grow your audience base for your podcast. So easy, actionable tips. Let me know how you make out. If you have any questions, hit me up. I'm always reachable at lindsay@smoothbusinessgrowth.com. If you found this episode helpful, I would love for you to share some feedback, whether it's on Podchaser or iTunes or your favorite app. And the more people that hear the podcast and listen, the more people I can help out, and more podcasters will be crushing it. And so have a great day, and I hope that helped.